everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Ruby here, and since you're watching this video, I suppose that you are a student and that you want to learn how to write effectively in your exams, or at least you want to learn the art and skill of writing effectively. So if you're among those who have ever wondered like why is that even after writing so much in your exam you still end up getting lesser than your expectation, if so, then this video will definitely help you out. Okay, so I know that our score alone does not decide our future. However, it comes with a bunch of advantages, such as when you're applying for higher education in any kind of educational institutions, when you're applying for PhD, when you're applying for any kind of high-level jobs, and even when you're applying for scholarships and fellowships, your score will be important. Therefore, there is definitely no harm in learning the art and skill of effective writing. So after watching this video, you will get some idea of how you can improve your writing skill and boost your academic performance. So today I will discuss on what are the things that you should do before the exams, during the exams, and also before submitting the answer papers. And I will also give you some tips of what are the things that you should avoid and what are the things that you should be doing. So if you really are interested in learning the art and skill of effective writing, then stay tuned till the end. So the first and foremost, let us look on what are the things that you should be doing before the exams. So I know that many courses are very new. So in that case, you might not find the previous year question papers. But if your course is not a new one, then in that case, consider yourself as very lucky and you should definitely collect the previous year question papers. After collecting the previous year question papers, you need to read and examine the type of questions that is being asked and also identify the structure and pattern of the questions. Next is you should identify the questions that are being repetitive. So in that case, such questions are more likely to be repeated again in the future. And next is you should learn how to manage your time. So in many cases what happened, the students end up not being able to attempt all the questions within the allotted time. Therefore in that case you should definitely improve your time management skills. Next is you should practice writing faster. So these two concepts are interlinked with each other. If you practice writing faster and if you improve on your writing speed, then definitely you will be able to manage your time. Next is you should also improve on your vocabulary and grammar. And the next is make sure that you have all the essential materials and resources necessary to write an exam before the conduct of the exams. And so next we will move on to what are the things that you should be doing during the exams. So the first and foremost is stay calm and focus. So many students end up having exam phobia because they stress out too much. So if you stress out too much, then you will not be able to concentrate on your writing, on what are the things that you know, and you will not be able to write effectively, and it will also hamper your mental ability to think and recall your learning. And next is you should read the instruction very carefully. Many people miss out the instruction, but instruction are very much important. Therefore, you should read the instruction very carefully before attempting the questions. Next is you should examine the questions thoroughly and ask if you have any doubt in any kind of sentences or word that is being used. If you find difficulty to understand, then you can definitely ask the invigilator of the examination. And next is you need to focus on the topic and write the relevant aspects. So if something is being asked and you're writing something else, then definitely it will not improve your performance. Next is you need to use appropriate representations, like for example use of graphs, diagrams, maps, and so on and so forth wherever there is a need arise. So in order for the examiner to understand the things in a better way, you can use the illustration. And next is you can identify the action verb that is being used while framing the question. So accordingly, you need to write the answer. And this I will be discussing in upcoming slides. And the next is write a brief introduction about the main points that you are going to cover in the beginning of your statement. So whenever you are writing the answer of your question, you can first briefly introduce about the main concept and the main points that you will be covering. And the next is you need to use a logical sequence from beginning till the end. Suppose if the question is being asked about describe about the project method in education. So in that case, you need to start from the logical sequence. First, you need to write the meaning and concept, and then you can go on the steps and procedure that is used during project methods, and you can also next move on towards merit and demerits, and then you can move on to educational implications and then conclusion. Next is you need to maintain the cleanliness. That means you don't need to have a very beautiful handwriting. Just what you need to do is write your answer paper in a clean manner. Next is you can use demarcation to mark the boundaries. Say for example, you can draw a line after finish of every answer to mark the ending of an answer or to mark the beginning of another new answer. It will help the examiner to quickly identify where your answer is ending and where the another answer is being started. Moving on to the next, when it comes to open-ended questions, we have short answer type and long answer type questions. As we all know that short answer type questions have less marks, say for example 3 or 2 marks. Therefore in that case you need to be very much specific, stick to the point, and you can also use paragraph, and you need to synthesize or narrow down whatever you know about that concept in a brief manner. Next is when while writing the long answer type questions, we all know that it comes with a huge marks. Therefore, in that case, you need to use a structure. Let's say, for example, you can start from introduction, and then you can write down the main contents. So in the main contents, you can write about the meaning, definition, and the process, the steps, and the silent features or characteristic, whatever is suitable according to the action verb that is being used, and then you can end with a conclusion. So this is the pattern of how you can write the long answer type questions. So now we will look on the different action verbs that is being used and how you can answer the questions according to depth. So these are some of the action verbs and its appropriate ways to write an answer. So the first and foremost is if the question starts with analyze, then it means you need to start with a brief introduction and then break down the concept into its constituent components and also explain each of the parts. And you can also include the pros and cons and then followed by an conclusion. So analyze means nothing but breaking down of the components and analyzing those components and then giving a summary of those. So here, since my channel is specifically for education background, so I have taken the examples from education background. But if you are from some other background, then you can relate these questions with that, because in social science and humanities we have a similar pattern of questions. So example of analyze is like, for example, if the question is on analyze the Freud psychoanalytical theory of personality development. So if such kind of question is asked, then you can start with introduction about the theory, its founder, that is the Sigmund Freud, and then you can include the silent features of the theory about the psychosexual developmental stages that has been there in the psychoanalytical theory, and you can also include about the educational implications of that theory, and then the pros or merits, and also you can include the limitations of the theory, and followed by an conclusion. So you can write in such a manner. And next is when it comes to compare or contrast, then it means you need to discuss the similarities and differences. So you need to compare within two concept or topic that is being asked in the question. So you need to highlight the basis of the comparison, like on what basis you are comparing the two aspects that is being asked, and then you also need to give reason or justification of their similarities or differences. So this is not a mandatory thing, but if you can give them, then it will be a booster for your score. Say for example, if the question is asked on give a comparative account of the educational system in India before and after independence. So there is a comparison of before and after the independence of the education system in India. So first you can write the answer like, you can first provide a brief account of education during the ancient and after the independence in India, and then you can highlight some points for comparison, such as for example features of education, curriculum, and then status and role of teacher. So these are some of the basis where you can compare the education system in these two context. Next is when the question is asked on contrast and compare, then the most appropriate way is to write them into two columns in the same page, where you write the dimensions of comparison and then the points that are under those dimensions. And next is you can also include the significant and limitation of each of them, then you can conclude your answer. So this is not exhaustive one, you can also write more than that, but you should also remember the marks that is being asked. If the marks is less, then you can limit your writings accordingly. And now moving on to the next, if the question start with critically analyze or critique, then the main purpose of asking this question is for you to evaluate and analyze the concept or topic being asked. And then you should also bring out or point out the logical criticism along with some support, such as the expert statements on that area, on that particular concept. And then next is you can also draw some appropriate statements and judgments along with justification. So for example, if the question is asked on critically analyze the importance of teacher education program in the progress of a country, so in that case you can write, say for example, you can start with a brief account of, that is the introduction of what is teacher education program in a very brief manner, and then what does the progress of education means. You can also highlight some dimensions of education that has direct implication on the progress of a country, say for example the level of qualification of a person and then the management role that the person gets according to the qualification. And next is the scientific advancement, which is directly related to the societal development. So these are some of the aspects or dimensions of education that is directly related to the progress of a country, so you can include such kind of dimensions and justify your statement. And then the preferable way to write is in point wise, because when you write the criticism, then it's much better to write the dimensions as a heading, and so it gives more clear observation for the evaluator. Next is you can also give some justification of your points with scientific research findings, if wherever there is possibility. You can also use the government data, such as the policy framework. If something has been highlighted in the policy framework, then you can also give that as a justification to your points and opinions. Lastly, you can conclude by writing a conclusion. Next, if the question is asked on define, then according to the marks that is assigned, you need to write the answer accordingly. So define means you need to give the meaning, its functions or importance or significance. Say for example, if the question is asked on define the concept of distance education, then according to the marks that is given in the question, you can start with the meaning, that is the etymological meaning, and then you can also give your own meaning, and you can give the certain definitions given by renowned personality, and then you can include the purpose and significance of distance education and then its pros and cons, and you can conclude with a conclusion. Now moving on to the next, if the questions have action verb like describe, then it generally means that you need to give a detailed account of the event or concept being asked. Say for example, if the question is like describe the classical conditioning theory, so in that case you need to start with introduction and then highlight the features of the theory, what are the features of classical conditioning theory, and then its educational implications, and then you can also write down the limitations of this classical conditioning theory, and then you can conclude with a conclusion. Next, if the action verb discuss is being used in the question, so discuss is similar to a debate, argue, or review. So it basically means for you to give a detailed analytical review of the entire topic being asked. Say for example, if the question is asked on discuss the philosophy of logical positivism and its educational implications. So if the question, such type of question comes, then you need to start with an intro about the logical positivism and then highlights its philosophical ideas. Since the question is asked on philosophy of logical positivism, therefore you need to highlight the philosophical ideas with respect to metaphysics of logical positivism, epistemology of logical logical positivism methodology, and then axiological standpoint of logical positivism. And you can also give the major proponent of this logical positivism, such as those people who supported this logical positivism. And then next you can include the educational implications, say for example the aim of education, the type of curriculum, the teaching method according to this, the role of teachers according to logical positivism. You can also include the limitations of this philosophy of thought, then followed by a conclusion. So next, if the question have a action verb such as enumerate, so it generally means to list down the concept, ideas, and steps of the topic being asked. Say, for example, if the question is on enumerate the Piaget cognitive developmental stages, then in that case, what you can do is you can briefly describe about the concept or topic, such as in this case, that is Piaget cognitive development, and then you can explain the steps along with some examples, and also highlight its significance in present education system, followed by proper conclusion. Coming to the next, if the question has an action verb such as evaluate, then evaluate is similar with the examine. So this can be used interchangeably. So whenever any of these are asked, it basically means for you to carefully study the topic, bring out its positive and negative outcomes, to provide your ideas or opinions or comments on the topic, and then along with a proper justification. So since question is on evaluate, you need to give your view, and you need to also justify your view and opinion. Say for example, if the question is on evaluate the issues of in-service teacher education program in India, then you can start with an intro. So in long answer type, you can always start with an intro. Next is you can highlight the growth of in-service teacher education program from the past till the present, since you are asked to evaluate the teacher education program. So you can also relate the past and the present, and then you can bring out the positive outcomes in the area of in-service teacher education program. Say for example the government schemes and initiatives that has been initiated and implemented in the area of in-service teacher education program. And then you can also highlight the limitations or issues, and then you can give some suggestions for improvement along with your justification, like why you think that your suggestion will work out, along with your proper justification. At the end, you can always conclude with a brief conclusion. Coming to the next, if the action verb such as explain is being used, it generally means for you to describe in detail about something along with facts. So here including facts is very much important. So for say for example, if the question is on explain the concept of creative process, so start with an intro and then write about its process, steps of creativity, and then you can also write the educational implications or outcomes of the creative process, and you can also highlight some examples. Say for example, you can give some examples of some creative innovations in the field of education, and then you can conclude it. Next is if the action verb illustrate is being used. Its purpose is that it involves giving a detailed explanation about the topic with the help of examples such as tables, blocks, diagrams, mind maps, and graphs in order to explain the topic. Say, for example, if the question is on illustrate the developmental stages of adolescence. So here you can start with an introduction about the developmental stages of adolescence, and then you can highlight each sub stages within this developmental stages of adolescence and its distinctive features along with the examples. Say for example, within the developmental stages of adolescence, there are sub stages such as physical development and mental development. Then you can write some examples of what are the physical development that is taking place during this adolescence development, and what are the mental maturation and development that is taking place within this stage. So you can always give some examples. Next is you can also highlight the positive and negative aspects of this stage, and you can also give some suggestions on how you can avoid the negative side of this stage. Then you can include the conclusion. Coming to the next, if the question has an action verb that is outline. So here what you need to do is highlight the main structure or blueprint or skeleton of the entire topic. So outline means nothing but just to outline the blueprint and main structure. Say for example, if the question is asked on provide an outline of the educational structure according to the NEP 2020, then you can start with an intro and highlight the main features of NEP 2020 and also give the structure of education system that has been given by this NEP 2020. And you can also outline the possible positive and negative outcomes of the policy, and then you can conclude it. Next is if the question has an action verb of summarize. It means to give a brief account or write down the concept, significance, major points together in the form of a short paragraph. Say for example, if the question is on summarize in brief the concept of educational technology, and in that case you can be very specific. So mainly the summarize question is asked for short type of questions. So here you can be very specific and then stick to the point and start with a brief intro about the concept, its types, implications, and conclude it in a brief manner. So next, if the question uses action verbs such as stress, then it involves providing evolutionary or progression of the topic under the question. Say for example, if the question is on trace out the development of women education in India, then you can start with a brief intro about the education and women education, and you can highlight its historical evolution of the concept of women education till the present state. And then you can also highlight the major significant development that has taken place in the field of women education in the past and also relate it with today's status. And you can also give some of the major development that has been achieved in the field of women education. After that you can conclude it. So this is some appropriate ways of how you can write the question paper according to the action verb that is being used in the question. So whatever I have mentioned here are not an exhaustive action verb. There is many other action verb that is being used, but here I have only included some of the very commonly used action verbs. And now that you know these action verbs and how to appropriately answer them, so moving on to the next, I will give you some additional tips of how you can write your answer in an effective way. So these are some of the points that you should remember and you should avoid. First and foremost is you can use some quotations wherever needed to give more added value to your statements or opinions, but it should be relevant to your topic. Next is you can use the definition given by renowned personalities of a particular field. But you know that when you use the definition, you need to write them in inverted comma. So when you use the inverted comma, it means you are writing the direct speech of that particular person. So in that case, you cannot do any kind of mistakes. So you need to remember and memorize that definition. And next is in case you don't remember the exact definition given by the person, so instead of using direct speech, you can use indirect speech. So for example, in a direct speech, when you write a definition, it can be written as M.K. Gandhi defined education as, and inverted comma start, by education I mean the all-round drawing out and so and so forth, and then at the end you need to close the bracket as well. So this is in a direct speech. So if you don't remember, then you can always go with indirect speech, such as you can write education was also highlighted by M.K. Gandhi as a process whereby the inner qualities of the child's body, mind and soul is drawn out. So you can write in such kind of manner. So in that case you give added value to your answer, so you can use such kind of indirect speech in your answer. Next is you should avoid using first person pronouns while writing the answer paper, such as you should avoid writing I, me or my, so to represent your ideas and opinions. So instead of using I, me and my, you can instead use it. Next is in case you forget the year of an event which is very much important for you, then instead of guessing and writing the wrong year, you can also use the century. Say for example, if you want to write about the education system during 1990s, then and if you forget the exact year, say for example the invention has taken place in the year 1995, but since you forgot the year 1995, you can always write like at the end of the 20th century. In that case, you are highlighting the year in an indirect manner. Next is, while writing the meaning of a concept in social sciences and humanities, avoid using words like is the. Instead, you can use can be. Say, for example, if your question is on write the meaning of education, then instead of writing it as education is the, you can write education can be stated as, because when you use is the, then it means that your answer is the only answer. So we all know that in social sciences and humanities nothing is exact, so everything is bound to change and everything is dependent on context. Even the meaning of certain concept can be different in different cultures. So you need to write can be instead of is the. So when you write can be, it means that the meaning that you are giving on education is one of the meaning. It means that your answer is not the only answer that is right. So these are some of the additional tips that I wanted to give. And next is, what are the things that you should be doing before submitting the answer paper. So these are very common knowledge which I guess most of you already know. So the first and foremost is, check out if you have mentioned your name and roll number in the first page and the additional sheets that you have taken in your exams. And the next is, check out your answer paper for proper markings of question number. And then you need to check out if you have put the additional sheets in a serial manner. Next is, you need to scan and skim through the answers once to identify if you have left out anything. So instead of directly submitting your answer paper after the writing, you need to check out these things. You need to manage an additional time for checking your answer paper, because in many cases when you run out of time, then many students end up submitting the answer paper just like that, and then later on they identify that they have done such kind of mistakes, that they have forgot to write the question numbers of the answer, and they have forgot to mention the name and roll number in the additional answer sheets. So in order to avoid such kind of blunders, you can always manage some additional 5 to 7 minutes in order to check your answer paper at the end before submitting. So these are the ways that I wanted to discuss today. So guys, these ways are not exhaustive. There are many other ways that can be used, and those strategies that I have mentioned today, you can use these strategies not just in writing the answer paper, but you can also use this in writing the assignments. So guys, this is all for today. So at the end, I would like to say that if you think that my video was beneficial for you or helpful for you in any way, then you can support me by liking to my video. And if you have not subscribed to my channel yet, then you can subscribe to my channel and also press the bell icon in order to get more notification in future. So thank you guys for watching till the end, and see you all in my next video. Till then, take care and stay safe.